Welcome to the Servant Leadership Program, a training program for leaders in the Salvation Army. You're about to participate in an exciting program which uses some of the latest technology to help you strengthen your knowledge and skills in the following areas: interpersonal skills, administration, management, leadership, and finance. All are important aspects of your work as a leader in the Salvation Army. But how does the program relate to mission? The mission of the Salvation Army is doing work and having the vision for doing the work, participating and proclaiming the good news, being with others and serving others, being in the presence of God now and becoming more aware of His nature. Mission depends fundamentally on the presence of God in us and the Spirit of God coming alive in other people. Our task is to facilitate understanding of the presence of God and the grace of Christ. Integrated mission means that all who are people of faith can be involved in mission, and that everything we do should be oriented to mission. It also means that the place of suffering, problems, and needs is also a place of potential for understanding hope, grace, and love, all of which are integrated by God's Spirit into the suffering of people. Yet we need to be present as servants to help grace emerge as a reality within people who are suffering and ourselves. This program will help you along a process or journey towards integrated mission. But how does the program relate to the role of the divisional commander or department head? The divisional commander will be the shepherd of all officers in his or her area, and in partnership with the responsible departmental secretaries will show pastoral care and concern for officers in all departments. He or she will provide leadership and support for all efforts designed to deepen the spiritual lives of Salvationists and stimulate a spirit of evangelism. As much as is possible, he or she will become involved with all aspects of soul winning in corps, social centers, and community operations. As a spiritual leader in the Army, at times he or she will speak on behalf of the territorial commander, after suitable consultation, on local, moral, social, spiritual, and ethical issues. The program will help to develop skills needed to fulfill the role of a divisional commander, department head, or similar appointment. Before we say more about program specifics, the General would like to say a few words to you about servanthood and this program.
Greetings in the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. You have started on your journey in the training program called Servant Leadership, appropriately called, for that is what we are, servants of the Lord Jesus Christ, regardless of our rank or position. To begin our study, we are going to look at the biblical concept of servant leadership as it relates to Salvation Army officership. Some people don't feel that the two words servant and leadership belong together, for they represent what seem to be opposing concepts. The world's concept of leadership is that of one person exerting control over another person and exercising authority and power. There's a fundamental difference between leadership as practiced by the world and leadership as practiced by the people of God. Jesus stated this emphatically in Matthew chapter 20, verses 25 and 26. You've observed how godless rulers throw their weight around, how quickly a little power goes to their heads, he said. It's not going to be that way with you. Servanthood is the key. Jesus Christ is the best model of servant leadership. He practiced and taught a radical concept of leadership that contradicted the world's concept of greatness and leadership. He summarized his concept forcibly. In Mark chapter 10, verses 43 and 44, he said, "If one of you wants to be great, he must be the servant of the rest. And if one of you wants to be first, he must be the slave of all." Jesus used two special words in this passage to describe leadership. The first word is the Greek word diakonos, or servant. The second word is the Greek word for slave, doulos. The verb form of servant means to wait at tables, to provide or care for, to minister or to serve one's neighbor. The word does not mean one who rules, but rather one who serves. The word slave means to be in bondage to another or subject to another. Slavery was widespread throughout the Roman Empire in the first century. Slaves were considered to be a lower order of humanity. By law, the slave was classified as property, as goods. They had no rights. They could not themselves own property. For one person to call another a slave was one of the worst insults a person could hurl at another. Yet Jesus used the words servant and slave to describe the highest form of leadership. Before Jesus taught about servanthood, he demonstrated what it means to be a true servant. He lived as a servant among people. Jesus chose the role of servant as the guiding model for his life. This truth leaps from the pages of the New Testament. He referred to himself as the Son of Man, who did not come to be served, but to serve. His life was characterized by this kind of servanthood. He gave of himself unreservedly in behalf of others. In his inaugural sermon, Jesus made it clear that his life was to be one of service. He came to proclaim good news to the poor, to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to those in captivity, and to help people who were blind, bruised, and broken. He came to bear the load of human hurt and need, not to rule over people. He came to serve, not to be served. Jesus not only chose servanthood as the basis and style for his leadership, he also told his disciples that they should follow his example. Jesus spoke plainly and to the point. Whoever tries to gain his own life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake will gain it. Jesus taught that by selfishly holding on to one's life, a person in reality loses it. It is by losing one's life in sacrificial service for others that a person truly gains life in its fullest meaning. On the evening before he died, Jesus beautifully portrayed one of his greatest teachings about servant leadership. He and his disciples were gathered in a Jerusalem home for a meal. The custom was for someone to wash people's feet as they came into the house off of the dusty roads. This act of washing the feet was, of course, usually done by a slave. Evidently, no slave was present on this occasion to wash the feet of Jesus and his friends, and none of the disciples volunteered for the job. The meal had begun. Who would be the one to fill the basin with water and stoop down and wash their feet? Suddenly, to the disciples' utter amazement, Jesus stood up and removed his outer garment. He moved to the side of the room. Every eye was on him. Jesus quietly took a towel, tied it around his waist, and he poured water into a basin. Not a word was spoken. Jesus knelt down before the first disciple and began to wash his feet. and then he dried them with the towel. That night, Jesus taught the greatest of all lessons on leadership. He demonstrated that the work of a true leader is service on behalf of others. The towel and the basin forever remain as the great symbols of Christian leadership. Commissioner Ed Reed captured the thought when he wrote this: "The basin and the towel, and God upon his knees." What graciousness is here! What holy mysteries! How needs of mine assail me when I watch the Master and his men. The basin brims with grace as Jesus comes again. He holds the towel to me to serve them in his name, to share such Christly ministries. I can but fall upon my knees. The Bible is clear. To be a true leader, one must be a servant. What the Bible teaches about leadership is strange from the world's point of view. Yet it is the path to happiness and greatness in God's sight. It is the path to mission. The way to be great is to be a servant. The way to be honored is to humble oneself. The way to receive is to give. The way to conquer is to surrender. The way to gain is to lose. The way to live is to die to oneself. The great leader is not one who gives orders, but one who obeys. Not one who has many servants, but one who serves the many. Not one who owns much, but one who gives much. So let's summarize. The secular world has a mixed-up view of leadership. To the world, leadership is associated with position, with power, authority, and prestige. The key to Christian leadership is servanthood. Serving others is the highest form of leadership. We are called to be servants today. To lose one's life in sacrificial service for others, a person truly gains life in its fullest meaning. The towel and the basin are the great symbols of leadership for Salvation Army officers. The studies that will now follow will show how the principle of leadership can be practically applied to the realities of Salvation Army officership. As you study, ask yourself the question, what is the equivalent of the towel and the basin to be in terms of the conduct of my day-to-day affairs as a Salvation Army officer? And God bless you in your service and in these important studies.
The General has answered some questions you may have about servanthood, but I'm sure you have many others. Let's take time now to answer some of those likely questions about the program.
The Servant Leadership Program is a training program designed by the Salvation Army, which combines video, written exercises, one-to-one tutoring, and group discussions. The purpose of this program is to strengthen the leadership skills of senior officers working throughout the world so they are able to fulfill the Salvation Army's mission. All Salvation Army officers, whatever their experience or appointments, need the skills examined in this program. But it has been designed particularly for leaders who are heading divisions or departments. The reason for this training program is to fulfill God's mandate of equipping God's people for service, as Paul has expressed it in Ephesians 4:11. Also, to respond to the requests from around the world for a training program, especially for divisional commanders and department heads. Key concepts in mission include participation, community, care, change, hope, and attempting to be like Christ, to follow in his steps in servanthood, interpretation, counseling, facilitating, and loving. The Servant Leadership Training Program attempts to help officers develop their abilities in these concepts of mission through strengthening abilities in interpersonal relationship skills, administration, leadership, management, and finance. Already, officers from many countries have participated in a field testing, a trying out of parts of this program. We have listened to their comments and ideas and have tried to design a servant leadership program that will be both useful and easy to use.
Even before the field testing, territorial commanders, divisional commanders, and department heads worldwide, along with leaders at international headquarters, provided valuable input into designing this program. The program will be available to every divisional commander and department head in the world. Now that you're familiar with some of the background, let's take a closer look at how you will work your way through the program. You'll begin each module by reading the learning objectives in the workbook, then viewing the video. To gain maximum benefit from the program, you should stop the video when it tells you to do so. It will usually direct you to an exercise to complete in your workbook. Using a video as part of such a training program may be new for many of you, so I will say a little about this medium of instruction. First of all, because this program is for the international Army, we cannot take trainers to every place in every country being served. Therefore, the video helps to replace a live trainer. However, because the video is used in so many countries, it's also impossible to adapt each situation in the video to each culture. Instead, through completing the exercises, working with your tutor, and participating in small group discussions when possible, you'll adapt the program to your situation. As you watch the video, you may think the settings look bare, bleak, or neutral. We've done this intentionally because we know that an office in India is different from an office in Kenya, which is still different from an office in Brazil. So to make the situations seem as neutral as possible, we have intentionally omitted some of the pictures, fixtures, and other items which make an office or boardroom seem inviting and comfortable. The video includes many role plays, dramas, or short dialogues to make a point or teach a lesson. The developers of the program have carefully considered the role play situations and other aspects of the modules to make them as realistic as possible. Even though you may not have exactly the same situation in your setting, we hope you'll be able to relate to the situation and think of a similar one in your territory. The workbook is a second important part of the program. Periodically, as you're watching the video, I will instruct you to turn off the video and turn to a certain page in your workbook to complete an exercise related to what you've just seen on the video. To gain maximum benefit from the program, you should follow these instructions. Don't skip sections of the video or workbook, or try to work ahead as you may miss some important messages or become confused. Contact your tutor if you're having difficulty with any parts of the module. In addition to a general introductory section and learning objectives and exercises for each module, the workbook also includes tutor guidelines, discussion guidelines, a glossary explaining key words, and a bibliography. Become familiar with the parts of the workbook before beginning the video portion of the program. The video and workbook are both integral parts of the Servant Leadership Program and must be used together. You cannot complete the workbook without the video, and your learning will be incomplete if you just watch the video and do not complete the workbook. Another very important part of the program is the tutor. Each participant in the program will be assigned a tutor and will ideally become a part of a discussion group. The tutors and discussion groups form vital parts of the program. Let's hear what two officers from different territories who are working on the program have to say about tutors.
Oh, I see that you are working on the servant leadership program too. How are you doing with it?
Well, I'm working on the second module, but I'm having some difficulty with it.
I'm also having some difficulty with it.
Oh, what's been the problem?
Sometimes I'm not sure about one section, and then that makes it difficult to follow other sections.
I know what you mean. I face that too, but when I do, I note the difficulty, then speak with my tutor about it at the first opportunity. The tutor has helped me to link the parts of the program together. She has also helped me with sections of the workbook and guided my progress. Sometimes we just talk about the program in general, particularly how it applies to my situation.
I've been relying only on the video and the workbook, but maybe that's not enough.
I don't think it is. The video and workbook are very useful and definitely form the heart of the program, but my tutor adds the human touch and enables me to ask questions and have discussion. The video and workbook just can't do that.
Are you also a part of a discussion group?
Yes, I am. That has also been very helpful. There we have the opportunity to hear what others have to say about the various sections of the modules. We also discuss parts of the workbook exercises which help us to better understand what we're doing and how to apply our learning to our work.
That sounds very useful. As soon as I return to my territory, I'm going to contact my tutor. Maybe we can get a discussion group started too. All the best with your program, and thanks for your help.
It has been good to talk to you again. I'm happy I could help. All the best to you too.
You may be wondering how long it might take you to complete the program. Well, this is difficult to answer because everyone will work at their own pace. Some may complete the activities more quickly than others. That's okay, but remember that understanding, not speed, is the goal. Although you will work at your own pace, the program was designed to be completed within approximately 80 to 90 hours. Most modules will take about 20 hours to complete. Estimating the precise amount of time an individual will need with his or her tutor and in group discussion is also very difficult. It will vary. Department heads at THQ, for example, may spend more time in these activities than a senior officer at a more remote location. Let's hear what some officers who are currently in the program have to say.
I like being able to work at my own pace. After all, the program is for us. Our learning is what's important.
I agree. Major Blinn told me that she felt disappointed because she wasn't progressing through the program as quickly as she thought she would. I told her not to worry. The pace that was right for her was the right pace. She's learning a lot, and I am too, and that is what is important.
It's good to just take the program a little at a time. I try to work a few hours each week. Someone told me that he tried to do the whole thing on one weekend. He said it didn't go too well. I can understand why. The program wasn't designed to be done that way, and I don't think it would be as effective. I need to think about each section of each module. How about you?
Yes, I agree. We must be careful not to rush through it. Well, I'd better get going. I plan to start a new module today, and I'm eager to begin it.
As we close this introductory section and begin the first module, remember that development of skills and knowledge through this program is all in the context of mission within the Salvation Army. Remember that mission is participation with others in growing to know God better in the grace of Christ and sharing our faith with others in the knowledge and experience that faith can make us whole. Now you should turn to your workbook, starting on page 3, read the introductory section, complete exercises, and look through the whole workbook so you know what's there. When you've finished looking at the workbook, you'll be ready to begin the first module, Interpersonal Relationships. Welcome to the Interpersonal Relationship Skills module in the Servant Leadership Training Series. The series begins with this module because effective interpersonal relationships build a solid foundation for leaders. Whether an officer is managing, counseling, pastoring, or serving in his or her role in some other way, the leader is almost always dealing with people. This module begins with a section on understanding self and others, because to understand and improve our relationships with others, we must first, to the best of our abilities, understand ourselves. The second part of the module focuses on our spiritual gifts, which God has given every Christian to be used in His service. The third part deals with empowerment and motivation, because as we better understand ourselves and others, we are better able to help others grow and develop. The next part of the module addresses conflict management, because conflict, which leaders must be able to manage, is an inevitable part of human relationships. Effective, clear, and sensitive interpersonal communication, which is the focus of the last part of the module, is the key to all of the above. When considering understanding self, each one of us might at first think, well, of course I understand myself. I'm with me always. But such understanding is not so easy. Sometimes another person, such as a trusted colleague, a friend, or a spouse, can help us to understand ourselves. Let's look in on such a conversation to help us learn more about self-understanding. We'll be watching a situation where one officer is frustrated with the way they just handled a situation with a group of soldiers and is discussing this with a trusted friend.
Sometimes I just get so frustrated with myself. I don't know why I say things without thinking them through.
Don't get too discouraged. That happens to all of us. The fact that you are concerned about how you interact with others tells me that you are on the road to increased self-understanding.
What do you mean, self-understanding?
Oh, don't get concerned. I just mean trying to figure out why we think the way we think, say what we say, and do what we do.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yes, I guess that is what I'm trying to do. I mean, I am trying to understand myself a little better. You know, I sometimes blame others in situations where things don't go as I wish. But I probably should start at home. Start with me, that is. Maybe if I understood better why I think the way I think and say what I say and do what I do, I wouldn't have as many problems with others.
I firmly believe that. Speaking from experience, over the years, I've tried to understand my attitudes toward many things in life, including people. I've tried to understand my behavior and how to make my behavior or actions consistent with my attitudes. I think this consistency helps others to understand me. They may not agree with me, but if my actions reflect my values and attitudes, they know what to expect from me.
Maybe that's why I consider you such a trusted friend. You know, I think I can learn a few things about self-understanding from you.
How can I better understand myself? What tools can help? The following ideas might be useful. Keep a daily diary or journal. Writing in a daily diary or journal is a useful way to record our reactions to situations. Reflecting on these situations can then help us to understand why we acted the way we did and to consider alternative ways of behavior or speech. We can also learn about ourselves through consultation with a trusted colleague, family member, or friend. Another method frequently used in organizations is to complete an instrument or questionnaire which a qualified person can then review. Such tools often provide insight into personal preferences, which in turn leads to increased self-understanding. One such tool which has been used successfully within the Salvation Army and many other organizations is called the DISC profile. The DISC profile is built upon the idea that understanding yourself and understanding others is a key to success in today's highly complex world. This tool helps individuals to identify which aspects of their personality are the strongest, which are the weakest, and how to use aspects of their personality most effectively. Through questions and answers, the DISC profile can help you to determine personal tendencies or likely behaviors in terms of 4 behavioral characteristics, to identify why you need certain types of people, and to determine how behavior styles can become more effective. In a moment, you'll have the opportunity to work with a profile through exercise 1. But first, let me explain what you're to do. The directions are repeated in the workbook. If I had been a disciple with Jesus, I would probably be A, like Andrew, supporting others who come to Christ. B, like Peter, ready to push forward and take risks. C, like Philip, careful and considering all the factors. Or D, like John, encouraging mutual love and respect. There are 8 questions to be answered, and each question has 4 responses. For each question, indicate your order of preference of each of the 4 responses. Put 4 beside the one most like you, 3 next, 2 next, and 1 beside the response that would be least like you. Be sure to answer as you think you are, not as you think you should be. When you've finished answering all of the questions, complete the form by putting your score at the bottom of the page. Circle the highest total. This represents your strongest leadership style. You may want to look at your second highest score, too. After you complete the exercise, return to the video for more explanation of the DISC personal profile and what it means. Remember, this is not a test. You cannot pass or fail. There is no good or bad profile. There is no best pattern. And you are what you are, and that's good. Research evidence shows us that the most effective people are those who know themselves, recognize the demands of their situation, and adapt to meet those demands. Now, stop the video and complete exercise 1, starting on page 19 in your workbook. There are 4 behavior styles. As a leader, your ability to identify the various styles will bring you new understanding about yourself and others. With this information, you can increase the effectiveness of your interpersonal relationships. Each of the 4 styles has key characteristics. Understanding these characteristics can help you deal more effectively with yourself and others. Let's take a look. The first is the D, or the dominant style. This style is seen in those who seek to control their immediate environment. The second is the I, or the interacting or influencing style. This style is seen in those people who focus their energy on those around them. The third is the S, or the steadiness type. These people see cooperating with others as the most effective way to achieve their objectives. Finally, the 4th behavioral style is known as the C, the conscientious style. It can be observed in those who focus their energy in doing things the right or the correct way. Understanding the various styles of behavior can help people in all walks of life become more effective in their organization and in their own personal lives. Why? When people know and understand their own behavior, as well as the behavior of others, they can further determine their strengths, limitations, and the areas for further development. This enables them to evaluate where and how to become most effective. But observing their behavior is just part of the process. Understanding the way they feel or think about certain areas in their lives helps us to discover their needs in those areas. Will each of you introduce yourself and tell us a little something of your goals and fears?
I'm Captain David, and I'm the dominant type of person. When I have a goal, I want to see results. Just do it and do it now is my philosophy. As to fears, well, I really don't think I have any, at least not that I know of. But when a project goes wrong, it's usually because someone misinformed me or someone took advantage of me in some way. I need to be in control over anything that directly affects me. That way you can be sure everything will work out okay.
My name is Major Ivette, and my style is influencing or interacting, and that means I like people. When it comes to goals, there are just so many that I'm not always sure which ones to start with. But whichever goal I start with, I typically like to be with people. I like to get my work done, but I like to have fun doing it. My goal is being with people and getting them to talk with one another as much as I can. Let's see, there was one other thing you mentioned. Oh, yes, fear. My biggest fear is having people get upset with me and not being liked as much as a result.
Good day. My name is Major Sombat, and my style is called steadiness. Now that I think about it, I like to be involved with people too. But I want everyone to do their own share so that everything gets done that needs to be done. I suppose stability sums it up for me. I think I'm afraid of situations where no one seems to know what is happening or what is expected. That kind of confusion really bothers me.
Hello, my name is Lieutenant Chan. I'm a C style, and C is for conscientious. As far as goals are concerned, I can think of at least 3 criteria that every worthwhile project should satisfy. I seek to achieve accuracy over everything else. If you're not willing to set high standards and be as accurate as you can be, it's not worth the effort. When it comes to fear, it is unwarranted personal criticism that bothers me the most. It's that simple.
Well, so far you've all explained your goals and fears, but that's just the beginning. Now, I'd like you to give some advice to other people with your same style so that they can be more effective.
D's have to be patient when they deal with other people. Other people don't operate as quickly as we do.
I guess for the I's, it's being more objective in making a decision. We can get so caught up in the excitement of a moment and even being involved with such interesting people that we end up losing control of time.
S could benefit by learning how to handle change more effectively. We just don't like change, but it seems like all the world does is change. And so we have to learn to live with that fact if we're going to be effective.
I would suggest C's look at being more aware of their own feelings so that they can be more comfortable with emotional situations.
Sometimes I's get a little emotional. In fact, people with my style tend to overdo it a little when we get upset. Sometimes people may feel attacked when we get angry.
D's overuse challenges. Sometimes I do overdo wanting to move people and situations around in my favor. If I don't, I may lose control. That bothers me.
S tend to appear too modest. Then they missed out on all the recognition. Deep down, they do like to be appreciated and get the praise.
Because we like to analyze things, it's very easy for a C to overdo it. I've learned that I can closely examine something that isn't worthwhile spending resources on.
Well, as you could see from the participants, each of the 4 styles approach the same situations very differently. Yet once we understand the style they use, we can predict certain behavior, which will help us leaders to match behavior with ministry. Stop the video and complete exercise 2, page 22 of the workbook, which will help you to better understand the disc profile. In closing this section on understanding self and others, let's hear from someone who has worked with others to help strengthen their self-understanding.
We must seek to understand ourselves so that we may better understand and serve others and God. Each of us is unique, different from any other person, and that is good. We do not need to try to completely change ourselves, but we each have areas where we can improve. We should strive for flexibility in dealing with others, because different situations and different people respond best to certain attitudes and behaviors. As leaders become more perceptive of what different situations and people require and are better able to meet those differing needs, they become more effective.
Stop the video and complete exercise 3, starting on page 23 in your workbook. Understanding your God-given spiritual gifts is a very important part of self-understanding. As a leader, it's vitally important that you understand the concept of spiritual gifts and reflect upon your behavior and attitudes to help determine your spiritual gifts. Understanding spiritual gifts is a key to understanding yourself and the body of Christ. In 1 Corinthians 12, Paul tells us that every Christian has been given spiritual gifts. But what does this really mean? A spiritual gift is a spirit-given ability for Christian service. We have certain aptitudes, capacities, and abilities that enable us to perform a ministry. These gifts come from God. The Bible tells us directly that Christians are stewards of their spiritual gifts. Stewardship is an awesome responsibility because it carries with it accountability. Every spiritual gift we have is a resource that we must use and for which God will hold us accountable. By discovering and fully developing your spiritual gifts, you'll become a better leader for God, help the whole body of Christ to mature and grow and glorify God. Exercise 1 in your workbook will help you to better understand spiritual gifts and to give you insight into your own. The spiritual gifts discovery exercise includes 36 statements. As you read each statement, you should think about the statement in terms of your own life and service. You'll mark points for yourself for each statement. If you give yourself a 5, it will be one of your very strong points. If you give yourself 0 or 1, it will be one of your very weak points. Give yourself 2 points if you're fairly weak in that area, 3 for average, and 4 for fairly strong. Put your score beside the corresponding number on the second column. Let's join someone who's completing the exercise.
Number 1, I am good at listening. Yes, this is something I admire in others, but I don't think I do it very well. I grow impatient if others don't get to the point. I think I'd better give myself a 2. Number 2, I enjoy explaining things to others from the Bible. Yes, now this is something that I truly enjoy, and I am good at it. I'll give myself 5 points. Number 3, I love preaching or talking about Jesus to a congregation or group. This one is interesting. Even though I thoroughly enjoy talking to individuals about Jesus, I have some difficulty speaking in front of a large group. I can do it, of course. I just don't consider it a strength. I think 3 points might be about right.
Now it's time for you to discover your spiritual gifts. Follow the instructions carefully. Stop the video and complete exercise 1, starting on page 31 in your workbook. Now that you've looked at your spiritual gifts, let's hear some comments from officers who have discovered their spiritual gifts.
I'm enabled to focus on those elements within my task that fit in with my spiritual gifts, and able to concentrate also on developing those elements in which I'm not so comfortable.
Knowing what your spiritual gift is gives you an insight into the nature and character of God, and makes you more aware of how God wants to use you for His own purpose.
It allows me to serve with gratitude, confidence, and humility. For while there's a new sense of self-esteem, I'm also reminded that I'm part of the whole, just one of the team.
Clearly, these officers and those they serve have benefited from the officers' increased understanding of their spiritual gifts. Stop the video and complete exercise 2, starting on page 33 in your workbook. You'll need your Bibles for this exercise, which will provide further insight into spiritual gifts. Remember, the results of this questionnaire are not necessarily final and totally accurate in determining your true God-given spiritual gifts. Some gifts may be hidden, but this exercise has helped, I'm sure, to increase your understanding of your strengths and weaknesses as God's servant. In summary, remember that God has given each Christian one or more spiritual gifts. Understanding our spiritual gifts is an important part of understanding ourselves, and each of us is responsible for developing and fully using these gifts for God's glory. Also, not having a particular spiritual gift is no excuse for not taking part in a certain ministry. Stop the video and complete exercise 3, starting on page 37 in your workbook, which will help you to reflect upon how you actually use your spiritual gifts. From this base of evolving self-understanding, one becomes better able to understand others and to help others to empower themselves. And we often hear people speak of empowering others and motivating others, but true empowerment comes from within the person. The servant leader can help to create situations through which others empower themselves. So empowerment is both internal and external. The same applies to motivating someone else. Motivation, like empowerment, must come from within the individual. These two very important aspects of interpersonal relationships are intertwined and presented together in this module because when people feel empowered, they usually also feel motivated. In other words, empowering usually results in internal motivation. Requirements of empowerment include a leader with vision, a leader willing to delegate authority, resources needed to accomplish tasks, and team context. When these elements, vision, authority, resources, and team context are present, individuals feel motivated to accomplish the task at hand. Empowerment means people are enabled to act and that the leader views them as responsible and capable persons. Let's look at a situation where two officers are interacting. As you watch, decide for yourself whether the interaction is helping the junior officer be empowered.
Good morning, Major.
Oh, good morning, Lieutenant. How can I help?
I wanted to talk to you about my core program and its expansion.
Certainly. Please, have a seat.
Thank you. I'm concerned about my core expansion. I have very limited personnel and not much in the way of financial resources. Here's a copy of the program.
Very impressive. Do you think your Corps is ready for this approach, and your comments on funding?
Well, We would need help to put the program in place financially, and then some assistance with the people audit. Could you arrange a team to help set this up? Then I think we could manage, and the project would generate people.
I'd like to help, Lieutenant, but I just don't have the resources. DHQ are fully committed, and I cannot send in officer support. Everyone is so busy. Just rethink it, Lieutenant, and do what you can.
Thank you, Major.
Do you think the lieutenant felt empowered and motivated in this situation? I seriously doubt if he did. What ought to have been done? Empowerment is enabling someone else to improve their skills and performance, express their ideas and creativity, have increased control of decisions in work and life in general, and become more self-directed. Unfortunately, the divisional commander in the video, although very polite and kind, was not interested in enabling or empowering the junior officer. He held tightly to his authority. He did not have a vision within which the younger officer could operate. He did not offer resources in terms of time, support, and finances to enable the officer to complete his task and to grow and become more self-directed in the process. And finally, he failed to encourage the lieutenant as part of a team. And there were many factors in this situation which influenced the lieutenant's motivation and feelings of empowerment. Many factors also affect your own motivation and sense of empowerment. Throughout this module, we're encouraging you to examine your own lives. So let's pause for a moment and look at the factors affecting your own motivation and sense of empowerment. Now, stop the video and complete exercise 1, starting on page 39 in your workbook. Remember these points about empowerment. Empowerment is something you encourage, not a gift you give. Empowerment must be accepted. It's not something you can assign to someone. People feel empowered when they're consulted instead of being told what to do. And empowerment is the best approach, although not always the easiest. Empowerment, or enabling people, is long-term motivation. Crises, other forms of change, or special events may provide impetus for short-term motivation, but enabling individuals to sustain motivation over long periods of time can be difficult. Author, psychiatrist, and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl said that one cannot always choose his or her situation, but one can always choose his or her attitude. We are not helpless beings. With God's help, we can improve and change. Regardless of our situation, we can choose our attitude. In closing, remember the words of Warren Bennis, a distinguished professor of management and leadership. The essential thing in organizational leadership is that the leader's style pulls rather than pushes people on. A pull style of influence works by attracting and energizing people to an exciting vision of the future. It motivates by identification rather than through rewards and punishments. This pulling style of leadership is the essence of teamwork. It draws individuals together and they move forward on their own collective will and spirit. Stop the video and complete exercise 2, starting on page 41 in your workbook. How a leader manages conflict reflects the quality of the leader's interpersonal relationships with others within their sphere of responsibility. You should not be asking whether or not you have conflict in your work and life. It's inevitable. Instead, you should be concerned with what you do with that conflict. That is what will make a difference in your officership and your life in general. The good leader turns conflicts into opportunities. Let's think for a moment about conflict. What is it? First of all, conflict is a natural part of life. It's neither negative or positive. It just is. Conflict can best be managed through goals related to learning, growing and cooperating. Winning and losing are goals for games, not conflict. It's not a contest with winners and losers, but instead is something which often leads to positive change. In nature, conflicts result in canyons, mountains, beaches, and pearls. Conflict should not be concerned with who is right and wrong, but should instead help to acknowledge and appreciate differences. We cannot always choose our situation, but we can choose our attitudes. We can choose to see a situation as unavoidable conflict, or we can choose to see the situation as an opportunity to heighten our perceptions, love more fully, and see beyond conflict to growth and learning. Conflict can be within a family, between two individuals within an organization, between groups in an organization, between ethnic groups, between religions, between political parties, or between nations. An individual can also experience inner conflict as a struggle between seemingly opposing goals, emotions, values, or beliefs. Many things can appear to cause conflict, but at the root of much conflict is the loss or potential for loss of basic human needs such as security, economic well-being, belonging, recognition, and control over one's life. Salvation Army officers must cope with and manage conflict in a variety of settings. I did not say resolve conflict because the leader may not be able to resolve all conflicts in spite of best efforts. But leaders need to understand how to deal with conflict and help the individuals involved to work with the conflict and not allow it to become a barrier to the Army's work or the individual's well-being. Leading experts in conflict management and negotiation offer the following advice. Conflicts often result when perceptions are inaccurate, emotions are running high, and misunderstandings exist. When perceptions are inaccurate, look for ways to educate. Try to put yourself in the other person's shoes to see how he or she is viewing the situation. Don't assume that they fear what you fear or want what you want. Don't blame the other person for the problem. In fact, try to separate the person from the problem. Address the problem, not the person. Try to discuss each person's or group's perceptions to see how they differ and how they're similar. Allow other people to save face by making proposed solutions fit with their values. When emotions are running high, allow emotions to be appropriately acknowledged or expressed. Try to recognize and understand your own emotions as well as the other person's. Don't react to others' emotional outbursts. Send a note of regret, shake hands, make a visit, or make some other gesture of goodwill to the other person should emotions threaten to disrupt or destroy your relationship. Work to improve communication when misunderstandings exist. Listen actively and acknowledge what's being said. Don't be occupied thinking about what you will say when they're speaking. Speak about yourself, not the other person. Own and express your own opinions and emotions. In closing, remember, conflict management is closely tied to problem solving. As leaders become more skilled in problem solving, the need for conflict management may decrease. Conflict will never disappear completely because conflict and its companion, negotiation, are a part of daily life. Even though you cannot completely avoid conflict, you can take some steps to make it more positive and more constructive by building good relationships with others, focusing on the problem, not the people, and continuing to strengthen your problem-solving and negotiation skills so that conflict becomes an opportunity for learning and growth rather than a contest with winners and losers. Look to God for help. Remember, conflict management is about making it work for us, not against us. Stop the video and complete exercises 1 and 2 starting on page 45 in your workbook, which will help you to see how you manage conflict in your own life. The quality of one's interaction with others is directly related to one's personal communication style. Some people communicate very effectively, while others struggle to make themselves understood and to understand and appreciate others. The good news is that each of us can improve how we communicate. We shouldn't set out to completely change ourselves, which would be impossible anyway. Remember, as demonstrated by the disc profile, differences are good. Instead, the effective communicator tries to understand himself or herself, his or her preferences, strengths, and weaknesses, and the recipient of the information. Then, do whatever is in his or her power to improve their communication. Let's look at two situations which contrast differences between a leader who works at understanding himself and another who appears not to do so.
Lieutenant, what is the problem? I asked that this work be done a month ago, and I see from this letter that you haven't completed it.
I sincerely apologize, but I think I can explain.
I'm not interested in your explanations. I'm interested in results, and I'm not seeing any. When I was a young officer like you, I would have jumped at such an opportunity to serve.
Yes, I too see it as an opportunity.
Lieutenant, enough of this talk. Let's get on with it.
But I simply need more people as well as supplies to finish the work as you wanted it done.
Now. We're always short on everything around here. You know that. It's the Army way. You're a bright young officer. I'm sure you'll work something out. Just make sure it's done soon.
But
I don't have time to discuss this further. I expect action on this soon.
That's right.
I'm so frustrated. I want to do a good job, but I don't have the resources and the support to do what he wants. I also don't see where this fits in with our overall mission. It's hard to keep working away when you don't see where your effort is leading. I need to get others involved too, but they also need to understand why we're doing this. His response to me is always the same. Oh, you'll work something out. I might be able to, but I could do a much better job with more encouragement, support, resources, and a sense that my efforts were appreciated. Maybe in the future it would help if I wrote out my issues before meeting with the Major. It seems that when we talk, we both end up feeling frustrated, and I rarely get to finish my ideas.
I just don't understand that, officer. He's bright, but never seems to get the job done, and get it done the way I want it. I know I'm clear with him. He just doesn't understand. Oh, well, it's a waste of time trying to figure people out. They'll never change anyway.
Turn to your workbook and complete Part 1 of Exercise 1, starting on page 53. In this situation, the junior officer evidences self-understanding through his behavior. On the other hand, the senior leader focuses on the other person, not on his own behavior. Examining how he handled the situation would be more productive because it's easier to change something within ourselves than to try to change someone else. Let's look at a different situation.
Lieutenant, I'm puzzled. I asked that this work be done a month ago, and I see from this letter that you still haven't completed it. I'm concerned that you may have had some problems with this, and I wonder how I can help.
I sincerely apologize, and I thank you for your concern. Yes, I've had some problems. Initially, I thought I could handle the situation on my own. But once I got started, I realized that the tasks really needed a team of people, not just one.
Can you explain more? What is the nature of the problem, and what resources do you need?
First of all, the distance is great, and I've needed to make more trips to the rural area than I had thought. So transportation has been one problem. Also, I need a woman on the team with me, as we must try to involve the village women in this effort. And as a man, it's not so easy for me to gain the support and trust of the village women. Finally, my other responsibilities are suffering because of the time I'm putting on this special project. I need some advice on how to deal with that.
I'm glad that you have come to me with these issues. I think we can work something out. We are part of a team after all, and we have to help each other. I know you have a special talent for working with people, so I would like to keep you on this project. Let's see what we can do together to help ease some of your other burdens.
Thank you. Where should we start?
Stop the video and complete Exercise 1, Part 2, starting on page 55 in your workbook. Earlier in this module, each of you completed the DISC profile, which helped you identify your preferences, strengths, and weaknesses so that you can work more effectively with others. These personality, preferences, strengths, and weaknesses definitely influence how you communicate with others. Also, consider your spiritual gifts when examining your personal communication style and how to improve it. As we've seen throughout this module, communicating with persons our age with whom we share values of the same gender, racial, and ethnic background is difficult enough. So it's easy to imagine how differences in age, values, gender, ethnic backgrounds, and culture make communication even more complex. Communication is often richer and more meaningful because of these difficulties, but not easier. Remember, everyone wants to be able to communicate effectively. Some people do it better than others, but everyone needs to be able to communicate. Many factors influence effective communication. The following suggestions might help you to improve your personal communication style. Try to understand the other person. Recognize that differences in age, gender, values, race, and ethnic background may make communication more challenging. Try to see these differences as opportunities for learning and change rather than as barriers. Try to discover how your spiritual gifts relate to your personal communication style and how you can use these gifts to improve. Don't try to be like someone else. Instead, focus on your own preferences, gifts, and strengths to see how you can improve. Stop the video and complete Exercise 2, starting on page 56 in your workbook. The last part of the module, Developing Your Personal Style, illustrated how understanding self and others, spiritual gifts, empowerment and motivation, and conflict management are all part of effective interpersonal relationships. Strengthening your interpersonal relationship skills is not an easy task, nor one which can be accomplished quickly, but it is an essential task for the effective leader. We hope you've increased your understanding of yourself so that you can better understand and work with others. Remember, an important part of self-understanding is identifying and learning about spiritual gifts, those special Spirit-given abilities for Christian service. But self-understanding is not enough. As a leader, you also must provide and develop a shared vision, help provide needed resources, and delegate authority, which enables others to fulfill their responsibilities. The leader who is effective in terms of interpersonal relationships must be able to effectively manage conflict. Remember, the good manager turns conflicts into opportunities. We hope you leave this module remembering that each of us can improve how we relate to others. This module has also introduced some tools which can help you to improve in this area, such as the DISC Personal Profile to better understand yourself and others. Spiritual Gifts Discovery helps you reflect upon and better understand what your spiritual gifts might be, and a personal diary to record your thoughts regarding development of interpersonal skills. Now, please turn to your workbook and complete exercises 1 and 2, starting on page 59, to help summarize and apply this module. Welcome to module number 3, which examines administration. Administration is the management of information relevant to the organization. The office is the place where information is managed and stored. This module, therefore, deals with managing information, mainly written information. If information management is done efficiently, the organization will be efficient and communication will be effective. In this module, we will explore some important parts of administration, beginning with the individual aspects, such as letter writing, boards, including chairing and agendas, report writing, project proposal writing, and managing information, involving filing and office procedures. You'll be familiar with these parts of administration, and the module will help you to consider in more detail what you often might do automatically. As you work through this module, consider your experience in each subject. Consider the suggestions, ideas, and examples given, and build upon them as you can and as needed. The purpose of this module is to help you to become as efficient an administrator as possible, and to help you continue to improve your skills and procedures. Writing letters is one of the main ways of communication. A letter can be one of the most effective ways for getting results and information. Because letter writing is a widely used means of communication, we often take it lightly without giving much thought to its importance and our accountability. Think of all the reasons we write letters: to give and ask for information or instructions, to confirm verbal communications, to acknowledge receipt of letters, to show appreciation, and to give encouragement. The purpose of written communication is to generate action. Here are 4 general ideas to help us to do that. Consider what you want to achieve. Written communication should always have clear objectives. You should start by thinking what you want from the reader, who you want it from, when you want it, and how you want it. Understand the people to whom you're writing. Be sensitive to their attitudes and interests and present your ideas in terms they will appreciate. Always consider how much readers know, whether they have the relevant background information, what their interest in the subject is, and whether they may have any resistance to the subject. Keep it short and simple. Business jargon and long words will confuse your message. Use active rather than passive sentences to give power and drive to your writing. Paragraphs should introduce new ideas, 1 per paragraph, and they should vary in length to add rhythm and variety. Always edit your writing. You may want to leave a sensitive letter overnight. When you return to it, cut out anything you do not need and read it out loud. Your ears are your most powerful editing tool. Let's look in on a divisional commander to see how he handles letter writing.
From the field secretary. Wonder what this is about. I sent you a letter about the day of prayer on Sunday, 5 April. This is... You must let me know immediately. If there were any first time, your Congress orders must be in by 23 February so that we'll visit you on March 16th. Okay.
Well, he certainly gave that letter a lot of his undivided attention. Let's see what happens when he decides he needs to respond to that letter later that day.
Okay, I must write to my Corps officers to get the information the field secretary wants. Where's that letter? Where's that letter? Oh, well, what's the point? I remember the ideas of it. It was about the day of prayer, the numbers, and the program. Right. Okay. Dear Captain, the field secretary wants to know, what else? Oh, yes, the Congress orders. Congress orders and Congress orders and okay, day of prayer.
Have you ever had the feeling that a few of your own letters were responded to this way? There are at least 3 things we may have observed about this situation. He has lost the letter, he depended on his memory, and he has forgotten important details of the letter from the field secretary. Let's visit the divisional commander again. See if you can notice what has changed this time.
Oh, here's several letters from the field secretary. Dear Major, I sent you the information and program for the day of prayer called by the general on 5 April. The attendance numbers was the special program used, number of first-time seekers on that day. Congress orders. I know that there are several months before the Congress, but let me have your order by 12 March. Dear Major, I write to confirm that Mrs. Capriati and I will be coming to you on Wednesday, 16 March. I think I'll get on this one first. Let's see. Dear Major, your letter. Congress orders. For Congress.
Stop the video and complete exercises 1 and 2 starting at page 69 in your workbook. When you've completed the questions, study pages 77 and 78 carefully. You will have experienced and identified a number of different feelings as you completed the exercises, which may help you in your letter writing. Now let's look at the various parts of a letter. Keep in mind your objectives and keep your letter brief and to the point. To help us remember the various parts of the letter, we will use the word S-P-E-A-C. Speak. Remember to speak. Salutation. Use the recipient's correct title, name, address, full date, reference number, greetings, and subject title. Purpose. Say what you want him or her to do or know. Explanation. Say why you want this. Action. Say how you want it and when you want it. Close. Conclusion. Your signature. Print your name, rank, and title. Also add CC to show courtesy copy to someone, if any. ENC for an enclosure, if any. Your aim is to make sure your reader understands you and to make him or her feel cooperative towards you. Since the reader cannot see or hear your tone of voice, use warm, encouraging, and friendly words. In letter writing, remember to think clearly. Be concise. Arrange logically. Refer to file and not memory. Be courteous, and have a separate letter for each subject. Now let's look at memos. Memos are similar to letters, and similar guidelines apply to both. The difference is that memos are often used within THQ and DHQ to address staff or officers and are less formal. Memos should state to whom addressed, sender, and date. Brevity is essential, but memos should be as polite as other forms of business writing. You should always give the same courtesy to your THQ or DHQ personnel as you would to your people outside of headquarters. A descriptive title should tell the reader what the memo is about. Clearly state if some action is required. In writing business letters and memos, we want to keep in mind 3 categories of correspondence. Private is official business for the interest and attention of the named person only. It's to be opened only by the named person, but in some cases, instruction can be given for the next person in charge to open private mail in his or her absence. Confidential is not for publicity or circulation and can be opened by the next person in charge if the leader so desires. Personal is of personal interest and to be opened only by the named person. It's important to mark the top of the letter and the envelope if the letter is private, confidential, or personal. In this way, mistakes will not be made and the letter will not be opened by the wrong person. Remember, the written word is a strong tool which can be destructive or constructive and should never be misused. Good advice is, don't send a letter if you're angry. Wait for a while. What's written is written. The reaction to a letter you've sent can affect morale, work, and relationships, so one needs to think clearly before a letter is sent. These guidelines are given to help you improve your style when writing business letters, direct mail, making a complaint, handling complaints, and memos. Stop the video and complete exercise 3 and 4 starting on page 79 in your workbook. As you saw in the previous section, letter writing is an effective way to exchange information on a one-to-one level. Salvation Army officers must also deal with administrative issues with groups, such as committees and boards. Sometimes we may be appointed as chairperson or secretary, so we need to understand these roles. During this section of the administration module, we will look at the various kinds of boards we may attend and at their importance, limitations, and the roles of the members. Basically, there are 3 types of boards: secular committees, interchurch and related committees, and Salvation Army boards. Within these 3 main types of boards, there are again different roles. The roles of the board may be policymaking, advisory, or planning. We must be clear about the type of board on which we serve, know its aims, and also its limitations, as this affects our participation. Stop the video and complete exercise 1 and 2 starting on page 83 in your workbook. Most officers attend a variety of meetings, committees, boards, councils, and briefing meetings. In this section, we will look at how to run a meeting from the chair and how to get the most out of a meeting. First, through preparation, preparing yourself and planning the details of the agenda. Secondly, controlling the meeting and involving participants. And finally, we look at what to do after the meeting to make sure that the things that were decided on get done.
Today we're going to discuss running a meeting from the chair. But first of all, let's review what you may have said were the qualities of a good chairperson.
Speaks clearly.
And listens carefully. And is tolerant of other people's ideas.
Good.
Yes, even if the chairperson might disagree with those ideas.
And it's important that the chairperson be committed to the goals of the meeting. I'm sure that you've written down most of these qualities and more. It's important to remember these points when you're the chairperson. Now, can anyone here give one word that best sums up everything the chairperson does from the chair? What's the key word?
Control?
Interesting. It is the key, but control of what? What are you talking about when you say control?
Control of agenda.
People.
Time.
Good, good.
Discussion.
If you want a good discussion, what do you expect from the chair?
To include everyone.
To encourage members.
Firmness.
Good, good. But you've left out one important area. You have the people and the agenda, but what's the first thing you must control?
The outcome?
That's a good point, but I was thinking more about yourself. Control of your attitude, control of your time and your preparation. In preparation for the board, the chairperson must decide on the purpose of the meeting and the objectives. Then check the previous meeting report and produce an agenda.
Now, bearing in mind what you just said, what advice would you give to a new chairperson?
I would advise that person to be early for the meeting, check the layout of the room, and then set the scene for everyone by clarifying the aims right from the start. Now, let's pause in our discussion. During the meeting, what do you see as the chairperson's responsibilities?
To guide the discussions.
To introduce the business.
Excellent.
Follow the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Summarize any complex discussions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And check to see that everyone has the same understanding.
Agree to further action, specifying who is to do what.
Good, good.
Agree to a deadline.
That's right. And to control interruptions.
Mm-hmm.
Manage time and pace.
Listen and analyze.
Excellent points. What important steps should be taken by the chair at the end of the meeting?
Summarize the agreements and conclusions.
Monitor the action to be undertaken by others and set time frame.
Inform others of the outcomes.
Excellent, excellent points. I think that we've covered everything. So let's summarize what we've said and move on in our discussions.
It's the responsibility of the chairperson to prepare themselves adequately for the board by answering 4 questions. What is the purpose of the board? Who's coming? Why are they coming? How do we get what we want? The answers to these questions will be the foundation for preparation of the agenda. During the actual board meeting, it's the role of the chairperson to guide the discussion. Watch the time, involve everyone, and be tactful. After the meeting, the chairperson is to check the minutes and allocate responsibility to others.
We've looked at the role of the chairperson at the board, but what about the writing of the agenda? This is important because it keeps the discussion within bounds and gives an order to the proceedings. It's a plan for the meeting. Now, what should be included in the agenda?
Minutes of the last meeting.
Okay, right, but let's list them in order. What would come first? Well, what do we open a meeting with?
Oh, well, prayer.
That's right. Prayer helps us focus and ask for God's guidance. Now, what next, before we do the minutes?
Well, what about apologies or regrets?
Okay. Then, after the minutes?
Items for discussion.
Well, not just yet. We're not finished with the last meeting yet.
Unfinished business.
Business arising out of the minutes.
Items for discussion?
Then new business.
That's right. And finally,
Plans for the next meeting.
how about a time and place for the next meeting? All right. We have a good agenda now. What else do we need to keep in mind as we start listing the smaller details of the agenda? Well, how do we know what business to start with?
Well, you can put the items in order of importance.
Right. And what else?
Group related items together.
Excellent.
Now, how about putting the items requiring detailed discussion on first?
That's a good idea. Go ahead and get those out of the way.
I think I would want to put the difficult items on last.
Yeah, me too.
And why is that?
Well, it's harder to get right into the meeting if you are faced with the difficult issues too soon.
Yes, it's best to warm up with easier to handle items.
But if you leave the difficult items to the end, you may run out of time before you have time to discuss them.
Well, yes, but see, I think that if you leave them to the end, you actually have more time for the discussion because you've already dealt with all of the other less important items.
I had not thought of that. Perhaps it depends on the personalities and working style of you and the individual members of your board. I guess you'll have to find out what works best for your situation. We'll close there. Well, I thought that was a great meeting. But, Major, you seemed a little frustrated.
What exactly is my role as secretary? Everyone has a different idea of what I should do, so I end up being pulled in all directions.
Okay. Let's take a little bit of time and talk about it.
Distribute agenda to everyone before the meeting. Provide documents relevant to the agenda. Make a note who is absent and record apologies. Read the minutes of the last meeting. Record minutes of the present meeting and action that needs to be taken. Produce and distribute minutes to everyone and highlight the names of the person responsible for a particular action. Be aware of the action deadlines and remind everyone as directed by the chairperson.
Now, does that help you?
Yes. Yes, thank you.
But what about the role of the other members of Salvation Army boards and committees? There are several things members should do to prepare themselves before every meeting. First of all, members should read the agenda and briefing papers, making sure that they understand the purpose of the meeting. They should check the previous meeting report. They should pay particular attention to those items on the agenda which directly affect them and think through the issues likely to be raised and plan their contribution. And they should remember to take all relevant information and material into the meeting. Once the meeting has begun, members should listen to the contributions made by others. Remember to address all remarks to the chairperson. They should speak when called upon to do so, when seeking clarification, when they feel they have a useful contribution to make, and try not to repeat what's already been said by others. Make a note of any further action which they have to take with the specified time scale and refrain from discussion between themselves. The way that a business meeting is managed will greatly enhance the performance of the people at that meeting. In addition, the members of the group will work more efficiently if they improve their individual skills. This will work towards making the best use of time and obtaining the best contributions from the group and individual members. Stop the video and complete exercise 3 and 4 starting on page 88 in your workbook. Like letter writing and board participation, writing reports is a vital part of our administration skills. Reports must communicate meaning accurately and clearly. We should avoid padding out the report with superfluous phrases and descriptions. Reports are written for different reasons, to cover specific events, progress reports, or any problem-related issue that may require disciplinary action. Let's go to the field secretary's office and see what reports have been received lately. Good morning.
Good morning.
We're interested in report writing and wonder if you could give us an idea of what reports come to territorial headquarters.
I'll be glad to show you.
Terrific.
Let's see, we've got quite a few here. We have a special report on special meeting for the war cry. We have a report to the territorial commander of a divisional campaign. We have a report on a departmental project progress report for the territorial commander. We have a report on a social center inspection. We have a report written by the territorial president for women's organization to the zonal secretary. And we have a report on disciplinary action involving one of the corps and a report on attendance at a workshop.
Ooh, so many reports. Now, let's look at each of these groups and examine the different ways in which they're written. What should we remember when writing a report for a special occasion? Let's visit an editor's office and ask her. Good morning. How are you today?
Fine, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
How can I help you?
Well, we were wondering if you could give us some advice on how to write a report for the war cry.
I'd be happy to. When writing a report of a special event, it must include interesting details, such as how people are attracted to God and the Army, and any unusual features. Be sure to state clearly where visiting guests, speakers, musical groups, and soloists come from, and check the spelling of their names. Reports of a major event should be no longer than 250 words, typed, double-spaced, with a wide margin, and they should be sent to territorial headquarters no later than 1 week after the event.
Well, thank you. There sure is a lot of work involved in writing a report, but then it is written for the public, and we want it to bring glory to God. What about guidelines for progress reports?
The main points to keep in mind are to report exactly what has been happening, compare the present situation with that of the previous report, noting where progress has been made or where losses have been sustained. Accurately assess the changes, noting any new direction which needs to be taken in order to reach the goals. It is important to set the goals which should be attained before the next report is due. When writing the report, make sure that you keep and file a copy so that future comparisons can be made.
Now stop the video and complete exercise 1 and 2 starting on page 95 in your workbook. Progress and special event reports are the most common ones to be written. As you know, they require careful planning and organizing. It's important to keep in mind the who, why, what, where, when, and how. Who is it for? Keep the reader in mind. What are you writing? Make an early statement of purpose. What will you say? Keep it short and simple. Where will your points go? Have a logical flow of thought. When do they need it by? Write in time. How long will it take you? Now let's turn our thoughts to the third type of report, one which is a report on disciplinary action which has been taken. Bear in mind that we're making a report on people in a certain situation. Therefore, the report should have no personal bias, should be a statement of the facts and not hearsay, should include a statement of the action taken and the reason for it, and the report should be confidential. If possible, those involved with enforcing the disciplinary action should witness and sign the report. Paul's advice to the Ephesians should be our guideline, to speak the truth in love. In summary, the three main types of reports are those which cover special events, those which reveal the progress of the work, and those which cover the handling of a problem. And remember, always make and file a copy of your report. Be accurate and keep confidential reports confidential. Stop the video and complete exercise 3, starting on page 100 in your workbook. Project proposal writing combines many of the skills needed and developed by letter writing, meeting, planning and facilitation, and report writing. Certain procedures have to be implemented before the project proposal writing stage is reached. We will touch on these briefly, but it's very important that these steps are adequately and satisfactorily covered. A systematic needs assessment must be done before writing a project proposal. When a need or a development opportunity is recognized, there should be consultation between the divisional commander, the territorial projects development officer, and the people who will be affected. A careful analysis must be made of all data collected. The need is identified. Responsibility must be accepted to meet the need or opportunity. That is, a group owns the project, whether it be a Corps, the community, DHQ, THQ, or any other authority. A plan is then decided on. There must be full consultation with the people directly concerned with the project, using the resources they have of time, skills, and money. The plan must be detailed and include materials required, personnel, finance, budget, and so forth. A project proposal is written in the hope that the Salvation Army or some other agency will find sufficient additional money for the project to be implemented. The more carefully these stages have been followed, the easier it will be to write the proposal. When a project is decided on, a project proposal form is to be completed. The form is to be used for all Salvation Army projects. That would include development projects for agency funding, mainstream projects for funding from Salvation Army sources, and small projects for support from a small group of donors. The form is designed to be as simple as possible, and questions have been kept to a minimum. However, every question is important. The information asked for is necessary for the needs of the majority of our donor sources. It's important to note that negotiation of funds takes time, and you must allow for this in your planning. It may take up to 3 months for the project to pass through the required Army procedures. Then additional time is needed for negotiation with the donor. It's recommended that you allow at least 6 months from the time you design your project, possibly even as much as 1 year. Before we look at the project proposal form, let's see what others have experienced. So, what kind of projects have you been involved with?
The purchase of bicycles for Corps officers.
Equipment for the local hospital.
Library books for the training college.
A youth training scheme.
Well, were all the projects satisfactorily concluded?
Not really, not mine.
What factors affected the progress of your projects?
Non-availability of supplies.
Ooh, things beyond our control, like inflation or a disaster.
And personalities clashing, or the change of appointment of a key person.
Insufficient information.
You may know of other factors. It's good to keep these in mind and try to make allowance for them in your planning, in your budgeting, in your personnel, and in local people having responsibility. Stop the video and complete exercise 1 on page 103 in your workbook. As you know from experience, projects are not done in isolation. Each step of the planning is done with others. The same is true of the project proposal form. It's completed by the team. The form requests that you define the need, give the full background of the community, including its nature, economic, and social conditions. Outline the program showing what will be done locally and by supplementary in-country help and what's needed from outside. Determine staff help needed, detailing the functions to be performed. Note supervisory responsibilities. Develop an accurate, complete, and realistic budget. Describe how the project will continue when project funds are finished. When a project has been accepted, it will be given a project number. This number should be stated clearly on every letter, form, invoice, receipt, etc. This will help you with your filing and avoid confusion. Prompt, full, and accurate reporting on projects is courteous and a mark of sound management. It keeps records in order and gives confidence to the donor and to international headquarters that money carefully raised and thoughtfully provided has been properly appreciated and responsibly used. To conclude the story, the project proposal will go via the divisional commander to the THQ Project Council, the THQ Finance Council, and, if appropriate, will be sent on via the International Secretary to the Development Services Secretary, International Headquarters, on to agencies, divisions, etc. Stop the video and complete exercise 2 and 3, starting on page 104 in the workbook. In this module, we've now examined letter writing, boards, report writing, and project proposal development. All of these are important ways to exchange and collect information. An effective organization must also be able to effectively manage information which is used in these processes. Remember that we said at the beginning of this module that administration is the management of information that is relevant to the organization. We will end this module on administration by examining how best to manage information in the office. Let's look in on an officer to see how well he's doing at managing information.
Good morning, Major.
Captain Mateo, what are you doing here? Hello, Major Watu. Yes, yes. Yes, yeah, well, yes, that's good to hear. Oh, yes, well, no, but I haven't actually got the numbers on that yet. No, not yet, no. But, where were you? Okay, where were you at here? Right. Yeah, oh, well, sure, yeah, oh, yes, I remember now, yeah, right. Well, let's see, wait a minute, I came across those numbers earlier, oh, yeah, here they are, yeah, I have it, yeah. Now, when were you going to be needing that? Tomorrow. Let's see. Why don't you let me fax it to you then? Right? Do I have your fax number? I do. Well, why don't you give it to me again, just one more time here? Yeah. Okay, sure. I'll give it to you. Sure. Okay. Let me see here. Let me write that down for you. And what was that number again, there, Captain? Yes, sir. Sure. Okay, I'll get that over to fax to you right away. All right, now, well, good talking to you. Take care of yourself.
We've seen how many things we have to do and might think that we shall never be able to do them all. So much will depend on how we plan our time. You may already be using yearly and monthly plans, and this is so important. Your yearly plan should include dates showing when you should start your planning for each event. For example, you may write in Congress in the month of September. Well, how long before September should you start your preparation? Write that date on your plan. Give yourself and your people plenty of time to prepare. This will save you much anxiety as the event approaches. It's also helpful to have a monthly program planner where you can see the whole month at once.
Congress is only 3 months away? I'm not going to be able to conduct the youth councils. I already have previous commitment. I also have 2 invitations that weekend. If I'm going to see the lieutenant, I better do it today.
Your weekly plan will be affected by yearly and monthly plans, as well as the weekly program and all other duties and work. A little time taken to plan your weekly and daily work will save a lot of time. At the end of each day, it's helpful to check and tick off what's been done and look at the plan for the next day and other activities of the current week. Before leaving the office on Friday, check the coming week's plan so you can be prepared. Display these plans in your office for quick and easy reference. Enter dates in a diary and keep it with you. This is an aid to your memory and avoids double booking. Stop the video and complete exercise 1 and 2 starting on page 112 in your workbook. With so much to do, it's important that your office work is done as efficiently as possible. The efficiency of your work will depend greatly on the way you keep your office.
Good morning, Major.
Good morning, Captain. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
You know, I wanted to have your letter for our meeting this morning, but I must have misplaced it somewhere. It was about making a band trip to another corps, wasn't it?
No, actually, we have plans for a band to visit our corps.
Your corps? Wait a minute here. Here it is. Nope, this is not it. Aha! Well, I think we see a problem here. It's just a scheduling conflict. Let's find my calendar. Oops. Let's see. Well, why don't you just reschedule it for next Sunday?
Major, I believe you're just looking at my first letter. I wrote you a couple of days later about a complication with the next weekend.
That's right, that's right. Let me find the letter, and I'll get back with you.
Wasn't that a waste of both officers' time? And was all that stress really necessary? And what kind of example was the major being to the captain? This organization affects you, other officers, your community, and the ministry of the Salvation Army. A disorganized office means lost papers and lost time. It means important action will be delayed or even left undone. It means worry for you, others at DHQ, and to the Corps officers under you. Disorganization can also cause you to neglect to attend meetings where you are the sole representative of the Army you serve. And of course, as a leader and a senior officer, you set a bad example to those you work with. A good motto is, a place for everything and everything in its place. Your office should be ready for anyone to take over your work at any time. An important part of managing information is handling mail. The main emphasis of this section is the handling of mail and filing. The tidy, efficient handling of mail and filing affects the appearance of our office and helps the smooth running of our work, both inside and outside the office. The time planned for this will depend on how and when you receive mail, whether daily, twice weekly, once a week, and so forth. In accordance with the orders and regulations, 2 people are to open the mail. Be sure to read mail carefully. It might be a good idea to highlight or underline important points. Then decide what to do about it as quickly as possible. Put it into preliminary files according to its category, such as finance folder for bills to be paid, letters requiring an answer, letters requiring some research, or letters for departmental delegation. Put the correspondence into permanent files. Take note, is it private, confidential, or personal? This is the initial sorting process. Mail must then be dealt with in order of priority in the time you've planned for correspondence. When answering letters, refer to the appropriate files to check on what's been said previously. This will help to avoid mistakes and confusion. Remember to make a copy of every letter you write to put on file. This is an aid to your memory and a safeguard if any query arises. Make a note of the date, time, and content of phone calls made and received and put on file. In both cases, this will provide a record and proof of all communications. Ask yourself, who else should receive a copy of this letter? Make copies for them. If you're setting a date for a reply, write a bring up date on the letter and make a BUP card to remind you to check on this. A BUP card may have this information. Make a tick sheet when asking for information on one subject from many people. A tick sheet may look like this. Now we need to look at our actual filing system. Filing is arranging in order all letters, reports, etc. So letter, report, or document, which is an essential part of information management, may be easily and quickly found. But which file? To know where to file the letter, we need to ask, what is the subject of the letter? If the reference number and subject title are carefully written in a letter, we shall know which file to put it in. For example, one of the letters has as its subject reference Congress orders. This letter could be put in the file subject Congress or Special Events or SP&S. Please note that the important question is, what is this letter about, not who is this letter from? The field secretary writes about many things. If these are put into a file labeled Letters from Field Secretary, there will be a muddle of letters and an incomplete file. This shows the importance of writing the correct subject reference and having one letter for each subject. File letters in strict date order, with the first letters at the bottom of the file and the most recent letters at the top. This is why it's important that all letters are dated. Remember, loose papers can easily become lost papers. The arrangement of files will depend on the furniture you have for storing your files. You may have filing cabinets with cradles and files, box files, or shelf folders, or a computer. Generally speaking, files are arranged numerically or alphabetically. See your workbook for suggestions of files. All records and reports should also be filed and dated. All correspondence is Salvation Army property and should be kept until permission is given for it to be destroyed. More details concerning preservation and destruction of files will be discussed in Exercise 4 in your workbook. Stop the video and complete Exercise 3 and 4, starting on page 114 in your workbook.